I was thinking, what's a good topic for today? There are a lot of tattoo styles. I mean, there's got to be just as many tattoo styles as there are flavors of ice cream or music genres. I mean, not really. But I will say there's probably got to be at least as many tattoo styles as there are movie styles. Yeah, that sounds about right. The point is, all these styles that pop up, from new school to the new ignorant style, which I'm not comparing the two because new school is actually cool style, ignorant style is what it is. But all these styles come from an originator, an OG, if you will. And these styles are the most important, and they won't go anywhere. While most styles might be a trend and come and go, and some might last longer than others, and some might actually make an impact and stay for quite a bit, these styles aren't going anywhere, and they never will. And I feel like it's important to touch on these because I think all styles need to know where they came from. So styles, here's where you came from. So you remember in the 90s or early 2000s and even the 80s, I guess. I started tattooing in like the early 2000s, like 90s, around that era. So this is probably when it's going to be most prevalent to be. But do you remember when people were walking around flexing their really cool straight black designs swirling across their arms? Tribal. You know I'm talking about tribal. Well, tribal came way before that. Obviously, I'm sure most people would know this. I would hope most people would know this. But people really don't think about how much tribal influenced all kinds of tattooing. Tribal's been around forever. Cultures utilized tribal as a way to decorate their bodies, telling a story about their family, their culture, or what have you. They use it to describe how many battles they've been in, what their job was in society, things like that. Now, 90s tribal, not so much. 90s tribal was more of like a, hey, I got buff arms. 90s tribal that we all know and love started from Leo Zulueta. Now, there are many kinds of tribal. I mean, you have Polynesian, you have Hawaiian, hell, even Celtic is considered a form of tribal. Weird, right? But the 90s tribal came from what we believe is the Borneo style of tribal. Leo took it and put his spin on it and made it a more marketable, likable thing. Now, again, Polynesian tribal is hit right now. Like, everyone loves Polynesian tribal right now. It's like the thing, and it's one of those things where people are getting it without really knowing what they're getting, but they're getting it. And which you do you. I have no preference on that. But 90s tribal, just the way Leo Zulueta did it, he made it this Americanized kind of tribal. He made it its own thing, even though it had resemblance to Borneo tribal. That style of tribal just hit different in a way that it became kind of like American tribal, like 90s American tribal. And it went everywhere. Everyone got it. I mean, hell, George Clooney had it in From Dusk Till Dawn. Vin Diesel had it in Triple X. I mean, people were putting it in movies to signify, hey, I'm a tough guy. Don't mess with me. And so people kind of got those tattoos to say, hey, I'm a tough guy. Don't mess with me. Now, tribal kind of disappeared for a while. Or not really disappeared. It never really went anywhere because, again, all for tribal were still getting tattooed. But I'd say American tribal kind of faded a little bit. It wasn't like that big of a deal anymore, and people weren't breaking down the doors to get it. But what it did do was it paved the way for other forms of tattooing or other forms of artwork. Biomechanical came basically from tribal. It didn't come from tribal. It was a mixture of tribal and other things. But tribal had a huge influence on biomechanical and bioorganic tattoos. From the flow and the shapes and the sharpnesses, you added these different elements from other things into tribal, making it still have that flow and sharpness of tribal, but you incorporated new school elements or realism elements or just textures and shines. And this allowed American tribal to, I guess, live on in a way. But here's the thing. Tribal is making a huge comeback. And I'm not talking about just like the biomechanical or the elements of tribal. American tribal is making a huge comeback. Now, Polynesian tribal has been a thing, and a lot of people are getting it. And other Celtic, again, has always been a thing that really didn't go anywhere. but American tribal specifically is coming back in a big way. And, you know, at first I was a little disappointed. You know, it was weird times with the tribal people, but I thought about it and I was like, you know, tribal actually has a huge place in tattooing. And again, it always has. And on top of that, why would I complain? Most people, I would assume, not most, a lot of tattoo artists that have been tattooing for long enough has done tribal. And the one thing you know about tribal is it can go pretty fast. It's not super difficult, and you make a good chunk of change from it. And so I look at that and I'm like, why am I complaining? What is the big deal? And when you think about it in terms of like how quickly it can go and how simple it is, and then you think about like its significance in tattooing, you kind of lose the ego of tattooing it, you know, because you see the benefits of it. And that's basically where I went with it. And then I also had to realize I had a tribal armband. You know, I have a tribal. I'm trying to get rid of it, you know. So I have it, but it won't be there forever. The point is, I had tribal armband, so who am I to talk shit on tribal? Now that I see it come back in this new form, and it's still the same old kind of tribal, but done in a unironic way. I mean, people are putting it with traditional stuff again. They're like incorporating it with realism. They're doing cool things with it that make it interesting. And again, back when it was getting tattooed before, when I was tattooing it years ago, it still was like, you know, you'd see tribal coming out of a rose, or you'd see tribal like wrapping around a panther or tiger. I mean, the additives aren't really that different. It's just the fact that the way people are doing it, they're doing it, I feel like, with respect, you know? And they're doing it with things where they make it kind of enjoyable. I mean, when a tattoo artist posts it on their Instagram for the most part, or posts it on their Facebook, or posts it wherever, I mean, they're pretty proud of it. That's why when they post it. And I'm seeing it everywhere. So to say that tribal hasn't had a lasting impact and is not one of the most important tattoo styles is very silly, because tribal is never going anywhere, from its cultural significance to the impact that it's had on modern tattooing and what it turns into. Now that I've had time to kind of like sit on it and think about it, I'm glad tribal's coming back. I kind of miss those days of like coming in, drawing on someone's arm for an hour, and then just sitting there and knocking out some solid line work, solid black color packing, and working on flow and getting to see how an image can transform an arm from just a blank, I guess, canvas. I hate the term calling someone a canvas, but, you know, blank skin to this stylistic, flowy object. Like and I kind of never realized how much I dug that before. I mean, you can go large scale with tribal: sleeves, back pieces, full leg pieces, bodysuits. I mean, tribal is meant to flow with the body. So you could do amazing things with it and have fun with it. And for a while there, when tribal kind of disappeared, or when it kind of like faded off a little bit, I feel like I forgot about the positives to it and kind of just thought about like, man, tribal's lame, right? No, it wasn't lame. It was me just thinking it was lame because I did a lot of it. And when you do a lot of something or have a lot of something, you kind of take advantage of it. But now that I'm seeing it back now, it's like, I'm kind of excited. I kind of want to do a tribal sleeve. I kind of want to do, some crazy, weird shapes on people. So, yeah, bring it on. Tribal. It's back, baby. Now, speaking of other styles of tattooing that incorporates, large areas of tattooed body parts, Japanese tattooing has got the coverage locked down. I mean, you start off with the sleeve, and then you start off with your other arm, and then you go to your legs, and then before you know it, you have your back and your whole torso done. Now, Japanese to me is probably one of my favorite styles, and not just because like the artwork is incredible and the motifs are great. I mean, I love dragons, I love eagles, I love Hanya masks, and I love all the creepy things, and the yokai. God, I love yokai. But other than the motifs, the style in general, like the where it came from and how it came about, to me, is the most impressive part. All the rules and the lore behind it. what flowers go with what season. Like, tattoo, that stuff is interesting to me. Having rules, you would think I'm a rule breaker. I am a rule breaker, but for some reason, these rules in Japanese tattooing impress me. They inspire me. I think it's like, maybe if like you're a lawyer and you need to you want to be the best lawyer possible, you learn every case you can and like all the facts about that case and why this works. Maybe it's the same thing. Am I comparing myself to a lawyer?
And you, Mr. Gambini, you will not use that kind of language in my court. You understand me?
Yeah.
Maybe. I am that smart. Maybe. You have to learn all these things to really, and you don't have to. I mean, I see tons of like Japanese tattoos that don't really follow certain rules, and they still look great, and they still like have the same kind of like storytelling capacity. But for some reason, to me, the rules and the lore really matter. Like, I love knowing that. Like, it's kind of an ego boost when someone comes in like, yeah, I want a koi that does this, and it's like, oh, a koi doing that means this. Or, I want a baku, or a baku is this. Did you know this? And I don't know. It kind of just makes me feel intelligent, because you know what? I am intelligent. I'm gonna hold to that. I am intelligent, but it makes me feel even more intelligent, knowledgeable about something that I love and do. This style of tattooing is super important because of its transcendence across the oceans. I mean, and its age. I mean, it started in, what is it, the 5th century? I mean, that's insane. That is, I know tribal's old, but we don't have a definitive date on when tribal started. We know generally that Japanese started tattooing each other in the 5th century. Imagine having your style, whether you do neo-trad or ignorant style or whatever style you do. You know what ignorant style might actually be one of the oldest forms of tattooing. People with tattooing stick figures on everyone. I'll have to explore that. But imagine having a style where you realize it's that old. You have all this knowledge throughout these years, throughout these centuries, throughout these to pull from. That's insane. Think about how much it's grown since then. Now, as popular as it is now, and as much as I love it, as much as people love it in general now, it wasn't such a big deal in Japan. In fact, in the 1800s, I want to say the 1870s, something like that, the Japanese government said, no, we're not doing this anymore. You can't tattoo. And they held to it. So Japanese tattooing kind of became Japanese tattooing became very looked down upon. And it kind of got looked down upon because of who wore it. Japanese tattoos were generally like for criminals, like criminals had them. And when it got banned, it kind of became even more of a popular thing for people to look tough. In fact, we have these rowdy boys that we all know today called the Yakuza, who would get full-on bodysuits to basically say, hey, I'm a part of this group. Now, the crazy thing is, when you were like getting tattooed and you're part of the Yakuza, like, hey, you need to go get your tattoo, you go to the tattoo shop and talk to your Harishi. I hope I'm not butchering that. Harishi, the tattoo artist that used to Tabori. And you wouldn't tell them, hey, I want this. You would sit down as a gang member with this Harishi and kind of tell them your story. Tell them like your path, where you came from, all that. And they would design your tattoo for you. He would sit down and draw it and say, this is what you're getting. And that was what you're getting. There was no like, oh, I was thinking like, no. You're getting this. I heard your story. This is what this tattoo means. This is relevant to you. Sit down, shut up. Now, the fact that someone could tell Yakuza, this is what you're getting, sit down, shut up. I don't know if they actually said it that way. I doubt they said it that way. But the level of respect that tattoo artist had from the Yakuza, that's pretty impressive, because they got that tattoo. That they said, hey, this is what you're getting, and you got it. And you'd sit there for all of it, being jabbed with needles for hours getting this tattoo. And that's the other thing about Yakuza style tattooing. It was a rite of passage. I'm not condoning gangs. I'm just saying that when they got these tattoos, they would sit through the pain regardless of how painful it was, because that showed their brothers that they could handle it. They were devoted to getting into this thing. Now fast forward to 1940s, 1948 or so. America occupied Japan for a while, right? And the war, all that stuff. And tattooing was still obviously banned during the time. So what does the boys of the old red, white, and blue do? Well, we unban it. We tell them, hey, we think tattooing should be legal here. Now it's still common, now it's still not very welcomed, even though it is legal. I mean, for the most part, you don't go to bathhouses if you're covered in tattoos, or you have your own kind of bathhouses, or there are certain things that they don't allow if you're heavily tattooed, but it is technically legal now. Now going back in time, and we think about like how tattooing, or how Japanese tattooing kind of became part of the overall tattooing culture. And that was due to a gentleman sailor by the name of Commodore Perry. Man, that's a cool name. And here's the funny thing, I was like, that's a rad name. I'm gonna take that, I'm gonna change my name to Commodore, because my dumbass thought Commodore was an actual name. And it is not, it's title. Which I'm sure you knew that, because you're not dumb. And earlier I was talking about how like I'm intelligent. I'm intelligent. Sometimes I just get kind of lost in my own head and think that words are names and not other things. Doesn't matter. Commodore Perry brought tattoo when he went to Japan for trade agreements, basically. They saw Japanese citizens with tattoos. Now again, even though it was illegal, it still was underground. It still was being done. Obviously, like most illegal things are still being done. They're just illegal. He saw these tattoos. He's like, that's interesting. I want to get one. And the odd thing is, if you're American, they didn't care if you got tattooed. Like, it was okay for you to get tattooed, just not their citizens. Good looking out. So Commodore Perry got a Japanese dragon tattooed on him, loved it, watched, learned, asked a bunch of questions, gathered as many books as he could, and brought them back to his country. And basically said, here, look what I've discovered. Here's what they do there. This is awesome. Oh, that's right, I want that. Oh, I'll take one as well. Oh, let's all get tattooed. So tattooing kind of went from, and it's not just Commodore Perry. I mean, he's probably what's most recognized. He's the most recognized person to traverse the seas with it. But many sailors that went to these countries, whether it was Polynesian countries or whatever, like tribal, like again, all these countries, people always brought back some form of tattooing with them from wherever they went. So, but Commodore Perry is kind of the name you think about when thinking about Japanese tattooing kind of becoming more mainstream with white people. So why is Japanese style relevant? Well, from all the things I've told you, it should be obvious, but Japanese tattooing is relevant because of its rich history, because of its tradition, because of its motifs, its storytelling ability, and it's because it's beautiful artwork. I mean, it came across the seas to other countries and everyone wanted it. It's just a beautiful art form. And people kind of took the time to understand it and learn about it. I mean, a lot of people talk about Japanese tattooing with such reverence. For example,
Horiyoshi III from Yokohama and Mr. Owada Horitoshi from Tokyo really added a lot to this convention, and I think it'll change a lot of people's concept of Japanese tattooing. Japanese tattooing has had such a great influence indirectly on the West, but I think this is the first time that people have been able to actually see this done on our home shores, and so this is the real stuff here, uncut. These guys do work that's incredible to me to see the evenness and precision of it working with a hand tool like that. Again, this technique was pretty much developed in Japan during the first big flowering of decorative tattooing in Old Tokyo, Edo as it was called then, in the late 1700s. So it's been going on unbroken that way for about 200 years.
And when you speak with something with that kind of reverence and that kind of appreciation, it leaves a mark. I mean, it's left its mark on tattooing culture. And that's why Japanese tattooing is where it is. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's never gonna be a style that just fades into nothing. There are tattoo artists that just specialize in just that, and they are very good at it, and they keep the tradition of the old tabori style as well as just the traditions of the history and the motifs alive in general. And it's incredible. And we're gonna be seeing a lot more Japanese before we see any less of it. Now, speaking of sailors, that's right. You know where I'm going. Sailor Jerry. Yeah, that's right. Traditional tattoos. Now, I only say Sailor Jerry because anyone and their mom who knows about traditional style tattooing is gonna know who Sailor Jerry is. I mean, you got Sailor Jerry rum, and his stuff's all over everything, shirts and shoes and all that stuff, which is important. But I'm not gonna get into the Sailor Jerry thing because Sailor Jerry's story has been done to death.
Like Sailor Jerry, he was probably bar none the master of the business. And for generations, or God only knows when, there'll never be another guy like him. And when he came back from the sea, he opened up his shop again and went back to tattooing. But he did all these other things too. Well, first of all, Sailor Jerry took the pure Japanese style and he combined it with the Western technique, and he came up with his own style. It's never been equal and probably never will, because he was strictly an individualist and worked his own way and his own technique, his own method and everything like that. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's impossible for anyone to duplicate that style when you speak of Sailor Jerry.
So traditional style, like the others on this list, really never lost any steam, never went anywhere. Like, it has been tattooed since inception all the way to now. Always. There's always been someone getting a traditional tattoo since it started. Never lulled. In fact, it is the most tattooed style in the world. Look it up. It's true. Like, it gets done more often and has been done more often than any other style. And I think that is due to mass consumption. Let me explain. So, sailors would get off their ships and they would go get tattooed. Think about the Sailor Jerry time, right? They get off the ship, Sailor Jerry spent 3 days straight just tattooing when they were on their leave. And I mean, he's not doing like a lot of back pieces and sleeves. He did some, but he's doing little bitty bangers. And he's knocking these things out from whatever, like 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the morning. And he's just doing this every weekend, right? Or anytime they had leave. So he's just knocking these out. And other artists were doing the exact same thing. I mean, they're just tattooing back to back to back. I mean, tons. I can't even fathom the number. I mean, I'm gonna say anywhere from, maybe it's an incalculable number to me. Maybe like 20 people a day, which doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, it might seem like a lot now, honestly, because most tattooers might do 1 or 2 a day, or appointment-only artists only do 1 a day, or they do 1 a week because they charge. And I'm not gonna get into that. But when you think about tattooing 15 to 20 people a day, and granted, you're only working 3 days a week. You're only working on kind of the weekend thing. But still, that's a lot of tattoos in that 3-day period. And other artists are doing that, and you're doing it every week. That's a lot of tattoos. And it was all traditional style tattoos. Whereas if you're getting like Japanese tattoo, you're getting a back piece or a sleeve, or even if you are getting a little piece, it's here and there. It's not consistent. Like, you're not tattooing, 20 people a day. You're tattooing, again, because of the tradition of it and because of like the ritual of it, you're probably tattooing one person that day, back then. And even today, most Japanese tattooers are working on huge scale, like large scale pieces. So like, they might do a couple like, Japanese little guys in a day, but they're working on sleeves and back pieces for most of the day. But what I'm saying is, out of all the styles of tattooing, traditional tattooing ranks the highest in the most tattoos given and most tattoos done in the world. It's a pretty good record. I mean, that shows popularity. And I mean, with something that popular, do you think it's ever really gonna fade? I don't think so. I think tattooing is, a lot of tattooing today, like I said, is due to traditional tattooing. I mean, the basic foundation of a tattoo is derivative from the traditional tattooer style techniques, okay? So Japanese style was done with, they do like a lot of tempori stuff. A lot of tribal tattoos back before, back with tribes of that were done with, it was stick and poke or something like that. The modern tattooing today with machines, cold machines, or even rotaries, relies on certain techniques. Bold lines, black contrast, solid color packing. And no matter what style you tattoo, for the most part. I mean, even today, Japanese in trouble. Well, no matter what style you tattoo, those are the basics of tattooing. But that's the bar right there. Clean line work, black color. That's it. Like, now, you have black and gray realism, which doesn't require a lot of line work, and it's just like soft shading and a lot of color. Okay, fine. But the idea of how to use that machine, the technique of using tattoo machines came from traditional tattooing. And when you think about the impact that that has on tattooing as a whole, why would you ever assume that traditional is not one of the most important tattoo styles in the world? I mean, it's definitively set the standards of tattooing today. So we're down to our final OG. Do you have a guess of what it is? Think about it for a minute. Well, I'm gonna tell you anyways. Chicano style tattooing. Now this is another one of those bad boys of tattooing. Getting it started primarily in the LA prison system, it has a very, very societal impact because its motifs come from Aztec lore, Catholic iconography, and again, prison art. So it also utilized socio-political things going on at the time as far as like, you know, racism and heritage and family. It used these things to cultivate its own style of artwork. And I mean, this started back in the day. I mean, this was like during the Zoot Suit Riot days, and not the Cherry Poppin' Daddy song, the actual Zoot Suit Riots, where Hispanic people were rallying against being treated like crap, basically. And you had artists at the time, Frida Kahlo and others, who were putting out artwork that symbolized their struggle and all the bullshit they were going through and their people. So like they were putting out this art as a way of bringing together their people, you know, letting the world know, hey, this is our life, this is our culture, this is our heritage, and this is what we're dealing with. So during the Zoot Suit riots, a lot of those rioters went to prison, and when they got out, or some of them didn't get out, but when they got out, the shit just kept going on. Like, you know, racism still was a thing, the socio-political turmoil was still a thing, and it just kind of like became a part of their culture, their rebellion against what people saw them as, and a rebellion against their treatment. And at some point, you know, the Zoot Suits traded in for long socks and khakis, and it became a new style, new trend. And artwork of that time transformed into tattooing and artwork on their bodies. So a lot of the artwork you saw in Hispanic people was part of the Chicano culture. It told stories of prison life, of their life on the streets, gang life, and I mean, not just negative, but their family and where their family came from and their loves and their religion and their beliefs. So I mean, it has definitely like a rich history. And I'm being a little more serious talking about this because like it's just all these styles to me are very important. I've tattooed all these styles and I love all these styles. I love tattooing in general. But when I think about the tattoo style that has had the most struggle and deserves to kind of be more revered, it would be the Chicano style. Because I mean, it came out of trauma. Like that style hits hard, and like the stuff that the motifs that people got, I mean, it was intense. You see like giant, and in prison too. I mean, I have friends back home who had like family in prison, and they would get like these cool little paños and like all these different artworks. And I had a friend of mine whose dad was in, and he drew him he drew him up some paños like that. And I was like, dude, I love those. I want one. And so his mom let me write a letter to her husband in jail. And I was like, hey, I'm friends with Lupe, and like I really want to like, I love these. Can I have one? He made me he drew me my own little paño that, you know, unfortunately I don't know where it is to this day. I think, you know, when I moved out, my mom. So I got my first paño from him, and seeing that artwork was on fabric was super impressive to me. Like, I don't know, I dug it. It was super cool. At the time, as a little kid, I didn't really know about the tattoo part of it. So to me, it was just cool artwork. But then when you see like these people come out of prison, so like I went again, same friend, we went to a friend's, like a 4th of July party or whatever, and he had a lot of his cousins and stuff like that. And you see some of these guys who are out of prison and they have like full-on back pieces of like Aztec warriors and women, or they have like a portrait of like their mom, or a portrait of their girl or their baby or whatever, and these are done in prison. And these were pretty good tattoos. Like, again, at the time I was young, so I didn't really know quality tattooing, but when I look back on it and think about like just how solid they looked and how you could make out every little detail of like the Aztec warrior's headdress, or like the temple in the background, or like how he literally could put a picture of his girl next to his tattoo and it was exactly like in prison. I mean, the commitment is insane. So I speak on this style with a little more reverence because it is, I mean, it's been through a lot, and it's a great style. And because of its cultural significance, I mean, Hispanic people are always going to get Chicano tattoos. Like that culture is not going to go anywhere. People are always getting that style of tattooing on them. So that's one reason why it's not going to go anywhere. The other reason is basically its influence on modern tattooing. I mean, Chuco Moreno basically said it best.
Absolutely. I think that you wouldn't have modern day tattooing would be, I think it would be lacking in very, it would be a really different outcome had it not be for the influence of the Chicanos and Chicano style tattooing. You know, black and gray, if you say that term today, it's because of the tattoo explosion in recent past years. It's a commonly used, commonly understood term, but the realism, the hyper detailed, the heavy black work, all of these things are modern versions of the original format of black and gray tattooing. And where that came from was, you know, neighborhood people who had one color that was was a handmade ink. We concocted ourselves and learned how to make, fashion homemade rigs and make permanent marking. It originated with the hand poke system. And then it evolved in later generations in the future of their tattooings into the rotary system of tattooing with a homemade tattoo machine. Yeah, man, I don't think you can have Polynesian, Japanese, even American traditional tattooing in the same sentence without giving homage or paying respect to the Chicano tattoo.
So yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have a lot of the tattoo styles we have today, like a lot of the subgenres of styles we have today that are super famous and super well known without Chicano tattooing. Like it's that important. And you can't talk about the other main styles without adding Chicano to it. Because again, like traditional, like Japanese, like tribal, the tattooing we know and love today, we wouldn't have without Chicano tattoos. It wouldn't be a thing. It's important to realize that. It's important to look back sometimes and see where these styles, and this is why I'm doing this, because I feel like if you see where these tattoos came from, you kind of have a little more respect for them. You kind of look at it in a way of not just it being a tattoo, but it being part of our culture. Like tattooing culture is a culture, and that's why it's important to us. And that's why, that's why you have gatekeepers. That's why you have all these things. I'm not saying gatekeeping is like necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing either. What I'm saying is that's why you have people that react to tattooing the way they do, because it is really important to them. It is a way of life. Tattooing, I've been tattooing since, hell, right out of high school. So tattooing has been my life for over 20 years. It makes up kind of who I am. It doesn't define me, but it is part of who I am. And it's looking at these styles that brought something that I love where it is today. You can't help but kind of be in awe of it. You kind of can't help to want to read up on it and learn about it. So that is the top 4 tattoos that I think are the most timeless and important tattoo styles of all time. If you agree, comment in the bottom, let me know what you think. If you don't agree, you're wrong, because those 4 tattoo styles are by far the most important. And if you have your own styles that you think are more important, again, leave a comment. Let's discuss. And if you want to hear a more in-depth, like, history on any of these styles, also comment and let me know, and I'll do a more deep dive on these styles for you. If you like what you hear, if you like me ranting and raving, if you like just looking at this pretty face, please like, subscribe. If you don't, subscribe anyways, because I talk about a plethora of things regarding tattooing. So you'll probably hear something on the channel that you like that really connects with you. So yeah, follow and leave comments and engage, because I read the comments and I will respond accordingly, and maybe pick a topic and I'll talk on that topic. So until next time, remember to tip.